Joining us right now is former SEC Chair Jay Clayton. He's a CNBC contributor, non-executive chair at Apollo, also board member at American Express, and a senior policy advisor to Sullivan and Cromwell. You've got a portfolio that is Jay Clayton. Nice to see you this morning.
Good to see you.
Let's talk about these climate disclosure rules that may now, it seems, get either watered down or loosened or something. And I'm curious how you think about that, but also specifically how you think about that relative to what's happening in Europe, because a lot of the American multinational firms that are doing business there may ultimately have to do some of these disclosures anyway. So what's really happening?
Look, you just raised a number of issues that all need to be considered together. Let's start with Europe.
Okay.
European financial market regulation has proven to be inferior to U.S. financial market regulation, at least over the last several years. Europeans are using financial market regulation to drive social policy. It's incredibly inefficient, ineffective. Why on earth would we import that to the United States? So that's like a fundamental question. So as we negotiate with our European counterparts, many of whom I know and I like a great deal, there has to be a little bit of, well, look at what we've done here in the United States in terms of financial market regulation, which is all about disclosure, efficiency, and choice, as opposed to in Europe, where, you know, maybe it's not about choice. Maybe it's more about what the state wants in terms of directing capital.
Well, let me ask you just a related question.
I mean, that's a very different approach.
Whose models do we use to try to get? Companies have no idea how to do this themselves. So they're going to have to outsource that to some agency that's going to tell them what to expect 5, 10, 15, 20 years into the future, for them to tell shareholders what their risks are, when the models that we've used at this point have been, I mean, the standard deviation is like 3 or 4 to 1 on how accurate the models have been in the first place. Who do we depend on?
The point that you make is why I am not surprised that the, quote, SEC climate rule is being reconsidered, but it's also why it should be scrapped. Okay, half of a bad idea is still a bad idea. The rule...
We're going to use the Euro model. It's great.
The rule that's proposed is an entirely new disclosure regime, not based really in economic return, but based in an idea about how we are going to transition, or what are going to be the drivers of transition of our energy and climate policy when we don't have an energy and climate policy.
But let me ask you a different question, which is, some people would say, advocates for this would say, disclosure unto itself should be a fabulous thing. Disclosure is transparency. It's the disinfectant of
that is
right.
That is one of the biggest appealing and bogus arguments, because disclosure of everything is disclosure of nothing. You have to have a limiting principle on what's going to drive your disclosure. We have a fantastic one in America. It is whether it's material to a financial decision. If you have that as your North Star, which the Supreme Court has embraced, right, then you can filter through the information that's provided.
Advocates for this would say that the more disclosure you have, A, the better, and B, that these decisions increasingly may become material. And I guess we can decide what's a material statistic or not a material statistic. By the way, we could debate, and you and I may be on the same page about this. You know, sometimes we have the ratios, compensation ratios. I don't know if that's material information, but I think it's been marginally helpful to somebody to look at.
It may those metrics around employment, wages, they're very relevant to the Department of Labor. They're very relevant in terms of how we're going to set what I would say is social policy in America. At a granular company-by-company level, they're often not very relevant to how that company is going to perform. There are much more relevant metrics that the people in the boardroom and the people in the management use. Those are the metrics that investors want, not a top-down metric that you would use to, I would say, set social policy.